And we continue to follow the aftermath of a deadly shooting at Piedmont Park. It happened on Saturday. It took the life of a 16-year-old girl, Tiana Robinson. Another girl, a 15-year-old, was injured in that shooting. According to Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, as of Monday, she was at home recovering. A $15,000 reward has now been put in place for information connected to this shooting. If you know anything, authorities are asking you to call Crime Stoppers. This shooting taking place in a major center of the city of Atlanta, Piedmont Park, a landmark, and raising a lot of questions, including from city officials and from neighbors. Our Grace King joining us now here in the 11 Alive Plus streaming center. So Grace, you have been talking with those city officials and with folks who live near the park. What are they telling you today?
Well, city officials want to say Piedmont Park is very, very safe. If you look at, the last 5 years of crime, they've only had 2 other homicides in the park. Of course, the Katie Jeunesse shooting back in 2021, and then a shooting at the basketball court in 2023. Neither of those were related to the hundreds of events they have there every year. So they want to say, this is a really safe park. This is a one-off. They don't know whether it was connected or not. The neighbors there are saying, the more events you have, the more people you have, something's kind of bound to happen, and have raised some serious questions about security.
And this, of course, coming after a major event in the park earlier in the day, 404 Day, a big celebration of all things Atlanta. The mayor at his press conference on Monday really seemed to emphasize and to stress that this shooting took place after 404 Day was over. He stressed that it happened in a different part of the park. APD, what are they saying about this?
APD says they have no idea who the suspects are right now. They're asking you for your help in identifying those people. But until they know who those suspects are, they have no idea why they were at the park or what they were doing there or what they were doing in the moments leading up. So APD has no idea if this was perhaps people at 404 Day who maybe had wandered through the park once it was over, if they came from another event, if they were holding some other kind of event, because they just have no idea who the suspects are. We do know that the 2 victims were from Riverdale down in Clayton County and Norcross up in Gwinnett County. So we don't know if it was the park itself. Of course, it's a gorgeous park that drew them to the park, or if it was perhaps the 404 Day. Just speaking to people in the area, it was so chaotic with traffic and hard to get to that you can't imagine there were that many people going to the park for the park itself, just given how hard it was to get there. And I also spoke to neighbors about that who said, they have a hard time separating the two in their mind. Take a listen.
I mean, look, someone commits a heinous act, an awful act. You can't blame it on the event per se. But I think that there was so much chaos and the event was so unsupervised that the likelihood of something like that happening, something bad happening, goes up. Whether it was someone being hit by a car, whether it was a shooting, there was just no sense to me of supervision. And they're saying, oh, these people were here for some sort of different event. I don't believe that. I think people brought their events, their gatherings to the park because they knew this was going on, and they weren't necessarily in the area of 404, let's say at the time this happened, but it was a big draw.
And this shooting happened, and about an hour after the event officially ended, and in a different part of the park. But again, APD at this time just doesn't know why they were there, if they were there for 404 Day, and it's raising some questions about what's to come.
As you have laid out here, APD, Atlanta Police, they have not identified a suspect yet. There is a lot of surveillance video, though, that has been released, and I think we have that. If we can put that back up. You're seeing on your screen now, Grace, this is surveillance footage taken from, if I understand correctly, that network of cameras that are in place in the park, right?
They said they've spent a lot of money upgrading security and safety at the park after the Katie Jeunesse stabbing, so they have worked
Which is
together.
Still unsolved at this point, we should mention.
Unsolved, and part of the reason is the cameras weren't working. They didn't have enough cameras, and they took a lot of lessons learned. Of course, they're still working every day to try and solve that case, but they took a lot of lessons learned in kind of the roadblocks to solving that case and implemented them here for the future. And again, they have hundreds of events here at this park every year. They have Dogwood Festival this weekend, they have the Symphony coming, they have Jazz Fest. But part of that too, Mayor Andre Dickens, he says, there's only so much the city can do. They were, the event organizers were in compliance with city code in terms of how many officers they had. It was a permitted gathering. They don't know what necessarily happened after it. But there's also the debate of guns at Piedmont Park. He says, guns are in the hands of too many people who shouldn't have them. They were talking about some of the accidental shootings over the weekend and also just kids getting guns in general. They don't, again, know who the suspects are. But Piedmont Park, they can't actually ban guns for most of the events there under state law. If you look at things like Jazz Fest coming up, they have a whole list of prohibited items, and it's grills, tent stakes, pets, loud music, all these different things that you can't bring to Jazz Fest, and on there you would expect weapons or guns, but that's not something they're able to ban under state law. So that's just one of those kind of weird dilemmas that there's only so much they can do to actually keep you safe.
Let's talk about the surveillance video that we are seeing. I suspect some people may look at that and say, look, I mean, APD, you've got the surveillance video. Why have you not yet identified a suspect? Grace, if I understand correctly, the answer is because the footage, at least that has been publicly released, shows the immediate aftermath of the shooting, but not the shooting itself. Is that right?
And we don't know how much of it's on camera, what investigators have or don't have. They obviously wouldn't release video of the raw shooting to us because that's very graphic in nature. So we don't know exactly what the cameras captured or how much they do or don't know. But we expect, of course, to keep hearing more from them as they put that out. And they're just saying, look at all the people in that video. There were clearly a lot of witnesses. Someone has to know something. They're offering that reward. You don't have to give up your name. You can stay anonymous. They just really want to be able to solve this, bring those people to justice so this family can just get a little bit of closure and not just live in the unknown.
And that reward, again, $15,000. If you know anything, you can call Crime Stoppers. The number is 404-577-TIPS. That's 404-577-8477. And we'll share that with you again in just a moment. Grace, before we let you go, we've talked about the Atlanta Police Department. We've talked about Mayor Andre Dickens. I know that you spoke with some neighbors. We heard from that gentleman sharing his thoughts on the event over the weekend. Have you had a chance to speak with any other city officials and get their thoughts on what happened this weekend and about the broader safety conversation, particularly as we head into the summer months where, as you point out, there are a lot of events that are always seemingly happening at Piedmont Park?
Well, Mayor Dickens says the council reviews these events all the time, and they always look at those safety things. We also spoke with the chairman of the Atlanta Public Safety Committee yesterday, and he was saying, as far as city code exists currently, this event did everything right. This happened after hours. He says they might consider things like looking at the curfew. The curfew right now for minors, it's midnight on weekends. This happened at 9 p.m. It's a challenging thing to talk about because some people say, well, it should be moved earlier. And then you have Mayor Dickens saying, these kids have high school football games and things like that you would have them out that late anyway. So he doesn't want to make it into a situation where these kids are intentionally caught. Some kids might get off work at 10 p.m. So it's a hard thing to balance between the responsibilities and activities that kids have as kids and just a timeline to prevent crime. There's no really balance. Midnight was kind of that cutoff where they felt good enough that no kids should be out without parents beyond that time. But it's something they're going to look at. They're going to evaluate, is this working? Do we need to be stricter in how we enforce it? Do we need to move it earlier? Is that working or not? That was the main thing they talked about. And then they also talked about just the general permitting process along with security. So for this particular event, the required minimum was one officer to every 1,500 people. At no point did it have more than 1,200 people. They had 11 APD officers in addition to 12 private security personnel. So they're saying, that's 23 times as much of the security as they had.
404 day, according to authorities, did what they're supposed to do.
Right.
They were in compliance.
They're saying, they went above and beyond with security. If you're looking at it by what the city is requiring, or the city requirement's too low, when you hear it's kind of that ratio, and people are saying, well, these 23 security personnel wasn't enough, and the city minimum's 1. So they said they're going to look at that. They just don't know. I mean, it would apply to all future events. They have to kind of look at those. The required minimum staffing also depends. The city's Office of Special Events told me on alcohol involvement. If they're selling alcohol on time of day, on expected crowd, it varies. So there's no hard and fast rule for that event that was the minimum, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the minimum for every event going forward.
And the big question, too, is would it even matter? Because if it is, in fact, that 404 day came, the event came and went, and then this shooting took place totally unrelated to 404 day, and that's still a kind of a question that's a little bit left to be answered. But if that is the case, it wouldn't really matter how staffed up the security and policing situation is for the permanent event if this happened on some other chunk of the property at an event that was, just an ad hoc get-together. And we don't fully know at this point, if I'm understanding correctly.
Well, we don't know. And if you look at the other two homicides, Katie Janess, that was, completely out of the blue. That wasn't tied to any event. The other one was a shooting at the basketball courts there. Again, not tied to any event. So those are two completely unrelated to any kind of event incidents. The Piedmont Park has 180 events on average every single year. So when you look at it, the numbers, and they're saying, our safety procedures work for basically 180 out of 180 events every single year. They haven't had anything to tie any homicides to these events in years. So they're just saying, what we've been doing is working. This is really tragic. One homicide is even too many, but they don't have enough information at this point to say our security procedures weren't enough. This is what we need to change. So that's, as the APD investigation works, City Council will then be able to look at it and say there was a lapse in security here, or there wasn't a lapse in security here, and kind of evaluate how to move forward.
And again, if you know anything, authorities asking for the public's help in identifying suspects, really gathering any kind of information here, you can call Crime Stoppers. There's a $15,000 reward. The phone number 404-577-TIPS. That's 404-577-8477. Our Grace King bringing us this update. Grace, thank you.